Well,
So
here's a
are there Confederate flags and other things, other symbols that people associate with racism? Does that exist, or is that all made up?
So I can tell you what I've seen with my own eyes. On the ground in Ottawa, what I saw is I saw one blue F-150 that was driving circles around downtown with a Confederate flag. They were there the day before the protests arrived. And as I was on the ground, they did that every single day for like the last 2 weeks. They drove around the downtown core with tinted windows and a Confederate flag. I also saw a gentleman walking in front of Parliament with a Confederate flag. He had a balaclava on with sunglasses, so you couldn't make out his face. There have been discrete instances where people have flown these hateful symbols. And what is behind that, I don't know. But it would be naive of us to think as well that there aren't super right-leaning or even left-leaning groups that are looking to co-opt these movements and putting those kind of hateful symbols out as fuel to the fire.
No, I would agree. I just want to say before Vince takes over, I would agree 100% that people come in and co-opt movements, bring violence, bring hateful symbols. Sometimes you see that more than others, and it is actually representative of the movement. We've seen that in some of the things that have happened in the United States. But a lot of times there are provocateurs that come in and co-opt the movement, and it certainly adds a huge hypocrisy if you're talking about freedom and then you at the same time you're showing a Confederate flag. that doesn't jive. But I'll just say really quickly for all of our viewers who are primarily far right or right-wing people, I think it's interesting. People will say, well, that's an outlier for this, but not acknowledge that, like I said, with some of the Black Lives Matter protests, that there were provocateurs and people who took opportunities to turn what was going on into something else. And, not acknowledging that the vast majority had a legitimate concern, and there were a few outliers that came and tried to spoil things. And I wouldn't be surprised. It sounds to me like the Freedom Truckers movement protest. There's a legitimate concern there, and we can dialogue just like Vince and I do every week. We can dialogue about how we feel about that and our agreements and disagreements, but we should acknowledge that sometimes there are going to be bad elements that sees an opportunity, and it seems like the right never acknowledges that with the left. The Boogaloo Boys have actually been arrested several times for causing violence during these Black Lives Matter protests, but they'll never acknowledge that. They'll just show up memes of this and that and the third, but not acknowledge that there can be people that come in as spoilers. So I just want to say that I do acknowledge what you're saying.